Hi, Marty. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I normally start off really with the same question, and that is, what are the musical projects that you're working on at the moment?
Well, right now I just released my latest album, Drama, and it is hot off the press, man. It just came out on May 22nd worldwide, and so promoting that thing has been kind of all encompassing at this point, but it's a labor of love this time. It took like 2 years in the making, and I really hope everybody enjoys it.
And can you give us a bit of background on how you got into music and your sort of roots as a guitarist?
My roots were basically just rock and roll. I mean, when I started, I really wanted to do sports more than anything else, but I wasn't really, I didn't have the kind of physique for sports or the talent or any of the abilities or anything. But when I saw Kiss, I said, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I think I can probably do what these guys are doing. And as soon as I saw Kiss, I kind of switched from sports. Well, Kiss was kind of athletic. I felt that this was like athlete, it was like rock, but it was athletic. And so I thought, yeah, this has everything I liked. It had all the action of sports and a lot of excitement and loud music and wild audiences and all that. So I was good there, and I figured I'm more suited to like playing a guitar than playing American football.
Were there specific guitarists that you listened to and got influence from?
At the time, not really. It was really I just liked anything that was even remotely like punk rock or hard rock or heavy metal, or I just liked loud, exciting rock music. Nothing, nothing too folksy or hippie or nothing with a message, but just like full on energy. I like the energy of the whole thing. And I think I gravitated towards bands that had a lot of energy when they played.
You're known for having a very singular voice as a guitar player. Where did that come from? Did you sort of seek that out, or did it just happen through osmosis and through experimentation?
I think everyone who has whatever that is inside them to make them go out and buy an instrument and go through all of the hassles or whatever it takes, all of the energy it takes to learn the instrument and try to create your own music, writing songs, forming bands, playing live. Anyone who has that in there has got their own voice somewhere in there. It's got to be. Every person is completely different. Um, I think the reason possibly why my own voice is kind of singular and recognizable is just because I've constantly honed it and not tried to do things that are outside of what I really, really want to do. A lot of times what happens to good guitarists or any instrument really is they make their goal to become a very well-rounded musician. They try to be able to be good at everything. And in the course of doing that, it's very, very easy to lose your own unique identity because there's just so much, I don't want to say unnecessary, but there's so much information that is coming to you that you don't really need to represent yourself. You know what I mean? So I didn't spend a whole lot of time learning ragtime on the guitar, or I didn't spend a whole lot of time doing that thing where people play percussively on an acoustic guitar. Hence, I couldn't even approach doing it because it's not in my wheelhouse. But then again, that energy that I might have spent learning those other things because they're really cool to do went directly into polishing the things that I knew about my playing that I knew I liked and I knew that I could get better at it and I could work at. So I think that's why um, my playing is kind of recognizable, I guess.
Although you have a very high level of technique, it never feels like the technique is there for anything other than to serve the music. Do you say that's right?
That's absolutely right. And another thing that contributes to that is the fact that I never really pursued, speaking like a Japanese person here, never pursued um anything like with a name on it. A lot of the trendy guitar techniques have names, you know, legato this, hybrid that, alternate picking, sweep picking. There's just names and modes and all these things that I just never was interested in those things. I was always just trying to figure out the melodies that I was hearing and how to create deeper and more musical melodies and how to interpret them better rather than trying to perfect, the ultimate alternate picking cleanly at a particular BPM. So as a result, I never really have like this showcase of any of those techniques really. And probably if asked to do any of them, it would not really be all that great. But at the same time, I've also developed my own techniques over the years that are probably pretty close to impossible to emulate because they're not the same techniques that everyone else is using. They're just deciding how long to hold notes out and choosing melodies that appeal to me, which might be kind of strange. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Um I'm not really a technique driven guy, although after playing for a million years, my technique, be it original, is probably pretty much on the difficult side of things.
The music has driven the technique and not the other way around.
Sure, sure. But I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best way for all people to make their music. I mean, it's probably a lot more what's the word, effective to go learn a bunch of techniques and really get them down and then draw from them to create music. But I just never did it that way. I just started by writing music and learning songs and trying to do things that I wanted to do. And over the course of that, developing my own weird way of interpreting things.
Your use of some of the sort of non-Western pentatonic scales and stuff like that, was that just something that you heard then and went, I like that sound, rather than something you studied specifically?
I never really stuck to like the pure, this is this mode, or this is this pentatonic scale, or this is this Phrygian scale, or I don't even know any of that stuff. Um, I think a lot of the times I did a lot of studying of Asian music, Chinese music, Okinawan music, Japanese music, and a lot of their music is very roughly, not completely, but it's roughly based on five tone melodies. Easy one to use is the case of Okinawan music, which is almost exclusively five notes in different orders. So that hence the pentatonic sound. Whereas I wouldn't do a whole song of that like in Okinawan music. Whole songs and entire albums only consist of like these five notes in different orders. But I might allude to those things for a moment, like in the song Mirage on my new album. There's a section where I just go deep into Okinawa mode. And not that there's a mode called Okinawa mode, I just made that up, but I just use the uh typical note structure that sounds like you're in Okinawa. And oddly enough, that same exact note structure sounds like you're in the Java part of Indonesia and Malaysia, that part of the world. And I was just in Jakarta and I had someone explain to me why those two very distant islands have a very similar musical sense, and it's really uncanny. It's absolutely fantastic. So I know a lot more of those kind of ethereal type of musical history things and musical cultural things. I know a lot more about that than I do about the third degree of the Locrian mode and any of that stuff. I just never appealed to those mathematical things.
How did you first start getting exposed to the music from different cultures?
The very first time was when I lived in Hawaii. There was a Japanese radio station, and they would play traditional enka music. And I loved the singing so much. It was so expressive and so exotic to me. I'd never heard anything like it. So I thought, if I analyzed the way they put vibrato on the voice, the way she sings, the singer sings, and I kind of included that in my guitar playing rather than copying the vibratos of all the guitar stars like every single other guitarist did, I thought I would have an interesting, just another interesting tool to have in my guitar bag of tricks, so to speak. And it turns out that I really related to this way of singing so much that it kind of became, it overpowered whatever guitar vibrato playing I had done previous to that. And ever since, I've continuously uh, brought that out to make my guitar sound more like a vocalist rather than a guitarist. And now it's at the point where I just don't even play licks anymore, hardly at all. They're just all vocal melodies. And that's another, when you evolve and you grow and you have new challenges and new experiences, you can't help but, um, pick up your own voices along the way.
Do you sing yourself?
Sing, no, if I could, I wouldn't be playing guitar.
That's kind of answered my next question then. So is your guitar playing essentially your voice?
It is. I mean, how wonderful it must be to be able to sing nicely, and to express yourself with your vocal cords and your body. How nice that must be. But alas, I just didn't have that.
Is there anything specific you're working on at the moment with your guitar playing?
Every single musical experience is going to add something to what you do. There's no practice this thing at home. There's no, oh, here's a new trendy technique. I better figure it out to keep up with everybody else. There's none of that. There's just writing music, there's playing shows, there's recording, there's rehearsing, there's arranging, there's every project that you ever do is gonna like be of some value to you at some point in your career. And I've been the same way since I was like 14 playing in bands. So like I never really had those woodshedding years where you're at home with a metronome and learning from books and stuff. Of course, I learned a lot of things which required a lot of practice along the way. I don't want to make it, I don't want to mislead you with that, but I always found that the most benefit came from actually doing projects. And I always say, like, one show and all the prep that goes into playing one show is worth like 1,000 hours of practicing at home. So once you realize that, you say, why bother practicing at home? I'm just going to try to play out as much as possible. Because at home, no one cares if you make a mistake, including yourself. But when you're in front of people, all of a sudden, everything matters. Therefore, the time that you put into it is like turbocharged compared to the time you do at home.
I mean, obviously, over the years, you've got a vast amount of touring experience. Have you got any tips for live performance for aspiring musicians?
The more the better. I mean, I think performance and everything that goes into a performance are the most valuable tools if your final goal is to be a performer. Some people, that's not their goal. If your goal is something else, well, that's a different answer. But I think most of us want to play in front of people eventually. So just get out and do that. The more you play in front of people, the better you get at playing in front of people. The more you practice at home, the better you get at practicing at home. What you do at home doesn't really help you outside of home. It may be a little bit, not very much. It's almost like sex. It's actually exactly like sex. You can practice at home and it's gratifying, but that ain't going to help you when you're in the real game. The more experience that you have in the ring, it's a perfect analogy. So, yeah, the better you get at doing the real thing, the more experience you tack on to it, you get better at that. And of course, playing live is not just the playing of the guitar. It's dealing with people. It's listening in an environment where you can't hear yourself, or all you can hear is yourself. You can't hear anybody else. These are the things that are so incredibly valuable over the years, because you'll be playing in a lot of situations where it just sounds so terrible, but you've got to play some really difficult stuff within this terrible atmosphere. The more you do that, man, there is no practicing on earth that can prepare you for that. So you just got to do that all the time. And then playing with jet lag is another thing. And playing when you're absolutely pissed off at something that happened in the day, or you got some terrible news just before a show, or there's too many people at the show, or not enough people at the show, or you're you have no guitar tech because your tech flaked, things that happen in high school. All these things you can't prepare for other than actually doing it. So that's where the benefit is.
I've probably got to ask you about one particular solo, which I imagine you get asked about all the time. It's partly because I keep getting asked about it. So I've been teaching for 25 years. I've been at ACM for 10 years, and the students across generations keep asking about the Tornado of Soul solo. When you did that solo, did you have any sense that you'd done something really special?
Absolutely not. That solo and every single other solo that I've ever done is done in the same way. It's just like go in there and I hope to get lucky with something. You know, I just hope that when I hear what's playing, I hope that I can add something nice to it. Hope that I could add something that helps it rather than hurts it. You know what I mean? That's all I'm trying to do. And of course, I hear about that solo a lot, like you do. And the only answer I can give you, which it's just my theory, it may not be true, but I believe that if you can keep people's attention for a long time in a guitar solo, that's when they think it's great. All of the famous guitar solos, the Pink Floyd thing, Stairway to Heaven, Freebird, what are the other big ones? Layla. Um, I think the Dire Straits song, I don't want to put myself in the superstar league, but my point is, I think that Joe Sixpack out there and the guitar players out there, they're like, wow, I'm listening to a guitar solo and I'm not bored after like 50 seconds. This is what real good guitar playing is. So I think that's what it is. So I think the reason why Tornado of Souls is popular is because it's long, and keeping people's attention for that long without any words or without any singing is probably what does it. But when I was playing it, to me, it's just a nice piece of music that I was trying to interpret in my own way, and people liked it, which makes me extremely very happy about it. But that I don't find it any more magical than any other ones that I've done, except for the fact that it was quite long, and that could be it.
And you managed to stick the landing.
Yeah, you made a safe landing. This is a good point, like for other guitar players out there. Um, you know, it's like what do you call that? A gymnastic routine. You start off, you get people's attention, and you get a safe, really graceful landing. Those are the two times where people are really caring. If you can keep something going along the way, you get the good beginning and good end. This is what I concentrate on consciously when I'm recording solos or anything really. Is this beginning going to grab anybody's attention? Is this ending really going to lead us nicely into the next part? A fantastic example of that, doing that well, is Neil Giraldo is my favorite example of like a great intro and a great exit. Brian May from Queen, great intros, hooks you in there. You're listening to the whole thing. When he exits it, it's a graceful exit and you're back into the song. you're not, a lot of times you listen to a guitar solo and it's like, well, now it's time to go and take a piss and come back when the song resumes. You want to avoid that. You want to be like, hey, man, the vocal's done, but like, I'm still here. I'm doing something that helps the song, takes the song to a new level. So you got to kind of consciously do that until it's unconscious. I remember, a long time ago, I used to really, really obsess on the first couple of notes of the solo, make sure it was something that not a lot of other guys did, and that it was just kind of a little bit jarring. And then growing up, then you just do it naturally because that's what you do. But then the ending of the solo, there's a lot of tricks, you listen to what the vocals are going to do, and you possibly harmonize the beginning of it, or you get out way long early enough so the vocals has a nice clean place to start, or you can sort of do a little asshole-ish thing and then stay a little bit too long. Even when the vocals are singing, you're like still doing something that's pretty cool. It's like, hey, I'm still here, check me out, which, sometimes you get away with it. Most of the times you don't, but these are things to think about. And the more you think, the better it gets for solos. And so that's kind of hopefully people can get some advice from that. I think that's important.
I think that sums up your playing to a degree where all your solos always seem to be an integral part of the song. They're just not there for no reason.
That's a wonderful thing to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I try I like to say that as long as it's better than silence, if silence is better than what I'm doing, I need to get out. I mean, growing up with the Ramones, I didn't need any guitar solos. It didn't lack anything. Didn't need a single solo in there. That says a lot. That says an awful lot. A lot of times, you don't have to put everything in there. You don't have to be there. So if you can do something that's better than nothing, yes, that's great. But if nothing is better than what you're doing, you either needed to leave it with nothing or rethink it. I'm the first guy to say, dude, this song doesn't need a solo. Just connect the parts. I'm lucky enough that when people hear my solos, it's in a place that hopefully could benefit from a solo. But what you said, it really means a lot to me because I hate it if I was to be thought of, well, he's just kind of wanking in here and this would be better off without a solo. And I'd be guilty of that sometimes too, I have to admit. But yeah, it's got to have a purpose in there.
How would you say your approach has changed over the years? Because obviously you've had a very long career now, a long time since Megadeth. How would your solos be different now from back then?
Yeah, I just think they're so much more evolved. It's almost like a different person. I mean, it is definitely the same person. And I went and revisited a couple of my Megadeth solos, a bunch of them actually before I did a couple of shows with Megadeth last year at Budokan and at Wacken Open Air. And before that, we were thinking which songs to do. So I was listening back to them because I want to play things pretty close to the way I used to. It's like a different person. A lot of the stuff that I did back then, I wouldn't do now. A lot of the rules, you kind of make subliminal rules the more you play. And one of the rules that I was apparently breaking consistently what it was the Countdown album. I have this kind of subliminal rule to never start the solo out on a root and never start the solo out on a downbeat. And then I listen to Countdown, and the first four songs, the solos start on the root and on a downbeat. What the fuck, dude? And that was like one of the biggest selling records of my career. So like it's just very strange how your your policies grow as you develop. Had I been given the same solo spots now, I would have approached them very, very differently. Um, But I just thought that was very interesting. I think I don't regret anything because those are just like snapshots of exactly where I was at that point. But I mean, if you listen to anything on drama or anything on my last five, six albums for that matter, it's so much more adventurous and richer and deeper and with far more interesting note variances and lengths and phrases and interpretations. It's just much more, there's much more going on, but that doesn't make it better. The only person who decides what's better is the listener and his experiences where that music was background music for, you know, if that's all that matters. But to me, the way I play now is just different from then.
You got the Jackson MF1 guitar. How did that come about?
Jackson has been a great supporter of mine since my first signature model with them, the Kelly, and it's just a world class instrument. There's my Japanese again, world class instrument. Um, yeah, they've supported me even when I had signature models with other companies. It's just what can anything we could help you with, we're always there. And it's just been like a family. Needs change, situations change, and companies change. But I always knew Jackson was there. And when it came time for me to like start thinking about a new guitar, I think this was like around 2016. I went back to Jackson and we talked about a new shape, and I wanted kind of a Les Paul shape. And they sent a bunch of different prototypes kind of to my very primitive specs. I played this one weird guitar in Chile, in Santiago, and I didn't know much about it, but I got the specs from it because I just loved it. I loved the way it sounded, the way it felt. And I sent those specs to Jackson. Boom, there it is. And it's a workhorse. I just love it. It's my favorite guitar.
It's a relatively simple guitar, isn't it? But it obviously does everything you need it to do.
Yeah, it's very simple and it covers a lot of ground. I mean, it goes from extreme metal stuff to very tender ballads. Um, really, it kind of blows my mind because on my new album, Drama, I played a ton of vintage instruments like 57 Strats and old Tellys and just these very, very wonderful glassy toned guitars. And just 2 days ago, I played a show in Tokyo where I did a lot of these songs, these ballads, but I used my Jackson MF1 for these. Just beautiful, glassy, clean tones. And not, of course, not the exact tone of a Telly from the 50s, of course not, but absolutely comparable as far as quality and listenability and playing for those type of tender ballads. So I was really impressed with that because I'm used to playing very aggressive metal on those things.
My final question today is, do you think learning to speak Japanese has helped you as a musician?
The main thing is kind of, what's the word, indirectly, because being able to speak Japanese has allowed my life experiences to grow in such a way that could have never possibly happened. Everything that I've been able to achieve here in Japan has been facilitated by the language. Everything. There's only so much you can do without speaking the language here. Um, and because of those experiences, every experience, musical and non-musical, shapes every musician. It doesn't have to be a musical experience. All the experiences that you have in your life come out in your music. And so the language, learning of the language is just before I came here, maybe yes, I was a decent guitar player, decent musician, artist, whatever. But as far as life experiences, you know, recording, touring, and rock and roll lifestyle, I had all that down. But when I came to Japan, suddenly I became a very much more well-rounded as a person, being in a lot of unusual situations. And those have definitely increased the depth of the kinds of emotions I'm able to tap into when I'm creating music. So kind of indirectly learning Japanese has helped me a ton.
Thank you so much for that, Marty.
Thank you, Tim. It's been a great chatting with you. Hopefully, I'll see you and play sometime with you in England.